In this video, I'm discussing a little bit of what I found out for my survey. And one of the things I found out was how there's actually a new wave of feminism, and they call it the fourth wave of feminism, and it kind of ties to the whole Me Too movement. One of the things I found out was how the Me Too movement actually started in 2006 to help women of color who survived sexual violence. But as the time proceeded, in 2017, it actually became more widespread because actresses started to talk about it, and they started to talk about how, what was happening as they were, going out for roles, and Weinstein, and how it opened it up to more people even talking about it on social media and Twitter, because people started creating hashtags to share their story. And because of this story, they even created like a church too hashtag, other stories for women and even men who had been sexually abused to talk about and share their story. And it also brought up another issue that was in the other waves of feminism, where some women felt that it didn't give to presidents but the wave had actually started in 2006 related to women of color. But yet this Me Too movement, because of the internet and because of their social media, was able to open up avenues for women of all color, women of all classes, women to talk about what they had gone through. And I remember I was discussing the Me Too movement with my mom, and one of the things she brought up was she was sad because it meant that women who had died before this came about were not ever able, if they had been sexually abused or sexually harassed, they were never able to talk about it because they had died. And they could have died for many reasons, because they were sick, because they were depressed. And it made me think about how, how some people who don't agree with the Me Too movement will talk about, how come they didn't come out sooner? Or how come they're coming out now after they made their money? And it all goes back to this sense of power. And there have been women who have talked about, sexual harassment at work or rape, and they're not believed. Or they do go to the cops and they're blamed because of how they dressed, or how they, of how, what were they doing? How did they say no in the right way? Because I read that in articles that there's been lawyers who would ask questions like that in rape cases. Like they would say, okay, when you said no, did you mean it? And it's like, okay. But it brought up this concept of, because of social media and because of internet, women and men can be sexually, or who have been sexually abused or have been raped, can now talk about it, can now share their stories. And it also goes back, they say, some people will tie it back to like churches and the way they've abused people, or priests the way they abused boys. But even men who have later talked about that abuse have talked about when they would come forward, they were still not believed. Right? They were told certain things, or they were made to believe like, oh, you caused something for it to happen. So then they didn't share that story. So there can be different things, different reasons why those stories aren't shared. Which brings me to, when I hear the term Me Too, I always think about when you're meeting people for the first time, and it could be like, the first time, like you're going to your first job, or you're starting a new job and you're starting to meet people, or you're in school and it's the first day of classes, or when you move away from home for the first time at 18 to go to college, and you start meeting people that you may not know, and you start talking about, things, and it could be anything. It could be where you grew up, it could be, did you have pets, it could be talking about diabetes. Like, you know, there's always this connection to another person when they say, oh, I'm diabetic too, or I got diagnosed at a young age, or there's the Me Too for me creates this connection among people, or in this case among women, or even among men who felt like they could actually talk about something that most people don't want to talk about. And for some people, they don't want to hear about it because they'll say, oh, it's always happened. But maybe these people are sharing it to kind of be like, maybe it doesn't always have to happen. And so for me, the Me Too movement is not just related to sexual harassment or sexual abuse. It's related to all things that humans can go through. It's related to being able to relate to another human being when you meet them for the first time and you're talking about something and it's something you've also been through and you're like, oh, wait, you too? Or, like me too, I've gone through that. And there's this connection created. And these connections that are created can help others. They can help, they can help stop things from happening, or it can help create this sense that in the current generation, someone does get hurt, or someone is getting sexually harassed, or someone does get sexually abused, they'll be able to find someone that will help them or be able to share their story without being put down or without being told, hey, this happened to you because of this. And they'll be able to maybe stop whoever's actually doing that harassment or the bad thing. And so for my survey, I want to know that when you hear the term Me Too, when you first heard about that, when it first started happening and it first started being out there, whether it was back in 2006 or back when the actresses were doing it, how did you feel? And also for you, what does Me Too make you think about? Like, what do you relate to it when you hear it? Do you feel like how I feel like it creates these connections and these relationships and a place where people can come together to help each other out and to also, stop something bad from happening? Or how do you feel about this concept?